everyone. Scott Hansen here from NFL Red Zone. I hope you're checking out 1 hour of 5 Yard Rush, one of the best podcasts on NFL football in the UK.
Good afternoon, Rush Nation. Sorry for all the delays and a bit of silence. It's been a pretty full-on week with news, with injury analysis, with trades, and it's just a case of taking a breath, seeing where we are with everything. I'll be back tonight with a great flagship show. Got a good guest on who isn't an analyst. It's just someone who plays a lot of fantasy football and has been getting a lot of an edge this year off a lot of things that we talk about on this podcast. And I wanted to put together something a bit more anecdotal, so I'll be doing that later on. I can't wait to do that. But it is time to go through the Fantasy Bible Part 1. A lot of games to get through in the early slate. Now, a couple of things to remember. First of all is the clocks change this week, so we will have 5 o'clock games here in the UK with this 1 week lag every year where the games are a bit earlier. So make sure your lineups are set a little bit earlier as the clocks do go back. So that's the first bit of that. And then second of all, with all sort of the news and there's so many different injuries right now, get your lineup set, but then also just be really clear of what people are dropping, see who they're dropping. There's some players that are getting dropped that shouldn't be dropped in leagues, and we'll go through maybe some of that tonight as well. Some stash plays that are potential. And then also players that are being held that don't need to be held. You know, you can drop Chris Godwin now. He's not coming back for the rest of the season and things like that. So just a couple of notes. So let's get straight into this. We've got tonight's game to break down first of all. It's Rams versus the Vikings. The over-under is the second highest over-under of the week. It's currently set at 48. There's only one game on the slate with a bigger over-under than that, which might shock a few people when I tell them which game that is. The Vikings favored by 3, not a big shock given their record on the season, but the Rams are slightly changed. They will have Cooper Kupp. He is going to be good to go. He's off the injury report. He will play tonight. Puka Nacua is listed as questionable. I don't think he goes. I would not be expecting him to go. They just opened the practice window. I think it's too short a week. Had it been Sunday, maybe we might have seen something different, but I don't think we're going to see it today or tonight. Sorry. So time to really look at the rankings for the week and where I've got people. And there's still a bit of movement here. There's still a few things in sort of flux with injury news, but with this game probably a little bit more set. Although in my morning ranks, I did have Sam Darnold as my QB5. I have moved him down to QB6, so I'm definitely feeling pretty confident about starting him. Matt Stafford's all the way down at 26. He's someone that you shouldn't be starting in any formats here. I have Aaron Jones at RB4 this week. He seems to be fully healthy, ready to go, and I think he'll be a big part of this offense, and you can really run on the Rams. I have Kyron Williams as my RB7. Both of those guys are absolutely mustard and keyed to this game. And then for the wide receivers, I do have Kupp at 3, Jefferson at 4. It's my wide receivers, Tutu Atwell, because there won't be Nacua at 29, Jordan Addison at 40. I do think he has a tricky matchup this week, and Jalen Naylor at 57. When it comes to the DSTs here, I have the Vikings at 12, the Rams at around about 25. Will Reichardt I have at 10 as kicker, Josh Carty at 20. How I see this game going is effectively, I think the Vikings will get up and they'll manage this game. I think it will be reasonably close to point spread. Again, points to this game being close. I think you'll see a high volume game from Kupp. I feel pretty good that he will put in a good week. As you can tell from my ranks, I think it will be, but I think this game will be predominantly run through the ground and short range passing. I don't think you're going to see a lot of splashy plays. I don't think you're going to see a lot of highlight reel big offensive plays in this game, which is why I don't think Jordan Addison is going to get a big role in this. I don't think Jalen Naylor is going to have a huge role. I think you're looking at Jefferson, Kupp, and Jefferson Cup and Atwell will be the main three. And I didn't even mention the tight ends because they're so far down in the ranks. Colby Parkinson's at 20 because I just think all that move will move across to Cooper Cup. So that's kind of where I'm at with all of them. I don't see there being a role for Colby Parkinson tonight. There'll be significant. And so this game is, we expect it to go one way, and I think it will be the Vikings. I think they'll be in front for large parts of this game. And I think the defense will be strong enough to hold out. But I do expect the Rams to continue to show improvement, and they'll be better on offense than they have been in previous weeks. Right, let's move into the next one. It's Lions v Titans. This is the biggest favorite on the lines. Has the Lions favored by 11 points with an over under of 45, which is just mad. Like, that's it's such a massive line. We're expecting this to be a blowout. And when this happens, this isn't always great for fantasy when you've got a team that's so far in control. I expect the Lions to win. I expect them to win big. We're not overly confident yet who the quarterback is going to be in this one. I do have Mason Rudolph. I do think it will be Mason Rudolph this week who will start, and then that just absolutely terrifies me when it comes to this offense in particular. So there's no new Hopkins. He's been traded. So there really isn't a lot of things to go on in this game. And I think because of such a high over-under, or not high over-under, but in terms of high lead for the Lions and then winning it by 11, I don't have Goff having a huge game. He doesn't need to. He's QB 19 in this. And I definitely wouldn't be starting Mason Rudolph. As I said, I think he's QB 31 in my ranks this week. So I expect the game to really be on the ground in terms of Jahmyr Gibbs, Tony Pollard, and David Montgomery. I think will be the big point getters in this one. Gibbs I have as RB8, Tony Pollard RB12, David Montgomery as RB22. I might move David Montgomery up at some point in the week just because of the way that this game script is. But I feel pretty confident that's where it's going to be. I think Gibbs will get a lot of the work, especially early. You might see Montgomery get a bit more of like the competition, but it might be the goal line stuff. But that's actually what Tennessee have done quite well is not allowing too many of those conversions late. Moving on to the wide receivers here, I have Amon-Ra St. Brown at 9, Calvin Ridley at 33. There's no Jameson Williams. Don't forget he is suspended for this one and for the next game as well. I still don't see a huge improvement to Sam Laporta. I do have him at tight end 16. I'm just a bit concerned that this game again will just go to Gibbs, St. Brown, Montgomery, and then that will kind of be it, which is why I have Jared Goff's rating so low as well. But I do have the Detroit Lions as my DST3, and Jake Bates is someone you could start. He's my kicker 9 this week. Effectively, for fantasy purposes for Tennessee, it's Tony Pollard, fade everyone else. If you've got Calvin Ridley, there's a flex possibility there. There might be others you favor, but everybody else is a fade. You just need to move on and move away from pretty quickly. Next, we've got Browns versus the Ravens. Ravens favored by 8.5, and there's quite a few of these high favorite games, and they are killers for fantasy. The over-under is set at 44.5 points. So again, we're seeing low scoring, mostly because of one team not scoring many points. Again, I expect the Ravens to take care of business. They were phenomenal on Monday Night Football. His offense put up 41 points. Lamar Jackson's looking like the MVP once again. At this stage of the season, it'd be very hard to bet against him if you were a betting person. In terms of Cleveland, there's obviously a change at quarterback, and it is going to be Jameis Winston, and he'll make that offense better in terms of passing, and there'll be a bit more movement, but it will take time, and it's certainly not going to be this week. It's going to be a really, really difficult week for a lot of this offense. and I really expect Baltimore to come in and absolutely dominate this game. Lamar Jackson is my QB1 this week because of that rushing floor and everything he's doing right now. There isn't a better quarterback in football. Jameis Winston is my quarterback 16. Startable in a super flex in a tough spot. But yeah, not one you're definitely looking to take advantage of. There'll be better weeks ahead. Derrick Henry is my running back 3. He is the running back 1 overall. Nick Chubb is at running back 36. Justice Hill at running back 44. I do think they'll just take it easy with Chubb. There's better games ahead for Chubb than this week, but we'll see. Just be a little bit careful. Zay Flowers does have a questionable tag. He did leave the game Monday night. He's at 24. Jerry Jeudy is at 28. He'll have a bit more fantasy relevance now that there is no Deshaun Watson holding him back. Cedric Tillman is at 38. Rashad Bateman's at 41. Again, he's always a good candidate for a touchdown desperation play. So he's at 41 for me this week. And then we get to the tight ends. And I actually think David Njoku is going to be heavily involved. I have him as my tight end 3. He's someone I definitely would be backing under Jameis Winston to really progress and put strides on. So I'm a big fan of him putting on a really, really good week. As for Mark Andrews, he's all the way down to 21, and Isaiah Likely 25. Don't think we're going to see particularly strong weeks from them this week. But you can definitely back the Baltimore Ravens DST. They are DST 5. And in terms of kickers, Justin Tucker is the kicker 6. Other sites will probably have him higher, but he hasn't been as automatic as he has been in previous seasons. Moving over to the Jaguars Packers, this is the highest scoring game on the slate. Over under is 49. Packers only favored by 4, which I think is crazy. I would have the Packers winning this comfortably. I know that the Jags are coming off a good win in London against the Patriots, but they looked absolutely terrible against the Bears. They've looked, all right, they've won 2 of the last 3. They lost the first 4. So the Jags are traveling back, so that's a huge rate. They've been out of time zone for 2 weeks. That will take its toll. And we seriously expect the Jags to then come up and all of a sudden things sort of be back to normal. I'm just really skeptical that we're buying into this because we've had one good game effectively from the Jags offense all season. So I'm not buying it. The over and under I'll take, definitely. I think the Packers will win this by more than 4, and I think they'll win it comfortably. And so for me, I just can't really get near the lines that are being put together for Jacksonville, and you'll see this in my rankings. I just think that the Packers will take care of this and take care of it comfortably. The only thing that gives you any hope is Jordan Love has thrown a significant amount of turnovers this season, and he could do that and get the Jags back into the game. And that's probably the only route in if you're a Jags fan thinking how you can try and win this game. Jordan Love is my quarterback 3 on the week. Trevor Lawrence is my quarterback 23. That tells you everything of what I think is going to happen in this game. In terms of running backs, I have Josh Jacobs at 20, Travis Etienne at 28, Tank Bigsby at 40, Emmanuel Wilson at 51. And typically you would normally have a running back higher, but because they love to be vertical, the Packers, I just can't see it. Jane Reeder has got a questionable tag, but I think he'll be okay. He's my wide receiver 14 this week. Brian Thomas is actually my wide receiver 15 this week. He has a good matchup. I think this will be a good week for him. But I have Romeo Dobbs at 30, Christian Kirk at 44, Dontavian Wicks at 55. Christian Watson is questionable, but if he is there, then I'll put him higher up in my ranks as well. Next up is the tight ends. I have Evan Ingram, who's going to have a questionable tag, I think, for a few weeks, but he'll play through it as he normally does. He's tight end 5. Tucker Kraft is tight end 10. And then the Packers D, there's some interest here, potentially, with the Packers D. I would probably fade it. They're currently my DST 8. I don't think they're heavily owned. And that's one thing, but I think on the whole, it'll be okay to play them this week if you do have them, but I tend to stay away just because they do give up big yardages and it can hurt them a little bit. Brandon McManus is my kicker, 12. He's someone that you can rely on this week for sure. Right, moving on to Texans v Colts. Texans are favored by only 5 in this game. I guess that's a bit of fortitude to how good the Colts D have been this season. Over under set at 46. It looks like Anthony Richardson's going to go. That does stagnate this offense a fair bit. Jonathan Taylor is back practicing, so maybe that will get this offense moving a little bit. But I can't see this only being a 5-point game for the Texans. We haven't seen the same free-flowing offense of the Texans that we've seen in the past. What we saw last year, I think there's just something isn't quite clicking. But they are being ruthlessly efficient as an offense and as a team, and it is working for them. And I think what that does mean is it will, I don't want to say hold them back, but they're much better with their clock management and how they look after the football and everything that they're doing. At a 5-2 record, they have been putting on a lot of victories, although they did lose to the Packers in the close one last time out. That would have propelled them to go 6-1, but they haven't been blowing teams out. I mean, they did play week 1, and this was a 29-27 game, and the Texans have, other than the Vikings where they got destroyed, all their wins have been, with the exception of the Patriots where they won by 20, they have been within 5 points. So the bookies are doing that because they're expecting the trends to continue. I just think that for me, the Colts are really struggling as an identity. They're struggling with the way that they play. They're struggling on offense everywhere. And they've got playmakers. They won a game last week that I don't know if they should have won against the Dolphins. And I think because of how bad they've been, it projected that way that they came out with them on top. But I expect the Texans to win this. It could be like a really ugly one, like 26 points to 18 or something, or 17 or something like that. It's going to be that sort of game. I think the Texans will, they'll manage this game. They might not jump out to a huge lead, but they'll always be ahead. They'll use Joe Mixon quite steadily in this one, and they'll push through. And you won't see Stroud put up the big numbers potentially. But I do have him as quarterback 11 this week. I actually have Richardson at 7. I think he'll use his legs, and I think QB scoring is a bit lower than it has been traditionally when it gets to this part of the season. And so as a result, I've got Richardson higher up because of his legs. And I'm kind of countering more the fact that the ceiling of QB play will go down with all these injuries that have been going on. And so therefore he elevates up more than his play really elevates up. Joe Mixon is my running back 1 this week. I think this is a great matchup for him. I think he'll see a lot of the ball, and he will run hard, and he will put up a really, really big game. Jonathan Taylor, who is questionable at this moment, he is my running back 9. If not, I would expect Tyler Goodson to carry the majority of the workload over Trey Sermon. But Trey Sermon should still be owned, as he'll have a bit of a 2-down back roll with Jonathan Taylor back in. Goodson won't have that role. As for the receivers here, I have Diggs and Dell at 12 and 13. I have Diggs just slightly ahead of Dell, but both of those I expect to have decent weeks. Josh Downs is at 34. Michael Pittman, who is questionable, at 36. As for the tight ends, Dalton Schultz sort of comes into play here. He is my tight end 12, one to definitely keep an eye on. And then as for the defenses here, Houston Texans at 11, they're definitely viable, and they've got a decent schedule coming up that you can make the most out of. Kaimi Fairbairn is my kicker 1 on the week. Wouldn't worry too much about the Colts DST or Matt Gay. Don't imagine most fantasy owners will have those in their lineups. Moving on next to Dolphins Cardinals. Dolphins favored by 3.5, over under 45.5. The big news is we expect Tua Tagovailoa to be back, and all of a sudden the dynamic Miami offense will be back, and this previous iteration of I don't even want to call it treading water. I don't really know what you would call what we've watched the last 5 weeks of the Dolphins, but effectively just a team playing in reserve mode, I guess. We'll go away to the sidelines. The Cardinals have lost their way. Kyler Murray hasn't been good enough in the last few weeks, that's for sure. And so they've had some difficult games. I think the difficult thing with Arizona is kind of what we kind of thought all the way along. The reason I wasn't so high on Marvin Harrison Jr. was never his talent. It's you take a receiver like that, and all you got to do is cover him, and who's next? And I think James Conner's been good, and I think James Conner will have some good days ahead. But they're a bit talent poor as an overall unit. Trey McBride is doing what he can, but it's a tight end. They don't have enough of a threat. It'd be interesting to see if they throw their lot in on someone before the trade deadline. I wouldn't imagine so because you're not expecting this team to make the playoffs. But they kind of exceeded expectations without being really good. And I think that's a really hard place to be as a coaching staff. They're kind of just in this real flux of they know they need to get better and they need to make decisions. And really the decision's going to be at quarterback, whether Kyler Murray is the person to take them forward. It is going to be a real tricky one. But in this game, it should be the Dolphins. And the only reason they're 3.5 is because they've lost a lot of games. And we don't know what situation Tua is going to be like when he comes back. If Tua is anywhere near his best, they win this game comfortably. And that's the presumption I'm going to have is they'll win this game by 7 or more, that they will dominate this game. We'll start to see Tyreek Hill come back a bit. We'll start to see Jalen Waddle, who's pretty much been missing, coming back a little bit. And I think we'll start to see a bit more of the Dolphins line. Achane will come back to life. We'll start to see a bit more movement here. In terms of how I've got them ranked, I've got these quarterbacks ranked back-to-back. Tua Tagovailoa at 14, Kyler Murray at 15. He really hasn't been putting up the numbers in the box score that you would be hoping for. As for the running backs, James Conner is my running back 10 this week. Devon Achane, my running back 19. Raheem Mostert, my running back 37. I'm probably a little low on Achane. I think it'll be interesting to see what they try and do here with them. But I'm being probably a little bit conservative here with my ranks. If you feel otherwise, then you should definitely go with your own gut here. Tyreek Hill is my running back, my wide receiver 11. Jalen Waddle, my wide receiver 22. Waddle does have a questionable tag. I do expect him to go. Marvin Harrison Jr. is my wide receiver 47. He gets the Jalen Ramsey treatment, and I don't expect him to overcome that. Not to mention that he's only put up 50 yards or more in 2 games this season and only 65 yards in just 1 game this season, and that was all the way back in week 2. So I'm not expecting Marvin Harrison Jr. to really affect the box score in this game, nor any other wide receiver here, because I think the one who will be Trey McBride. He is my tight end 3. And then looking at the defenses here, the Miami Dolphins are my DST 9. And then as for kickers here, you could have a look at them. I don't think you're going to need to go out and get either of the kickers here for this game. I mean, if you were absolutely desperate and you wanted to go and get Jason Sanders, he's kicker 19, but not one I'd be looking at for sure. And Chad Ryland is kicker 23. Moving on to the next game, and it's the Falcons versus the Buccaneers. And the Falcons are only favored by 2.5. The over-under is 46. I expect the over to be hit. Here in particular, I think we had a shootout with these teams just a couple of weeks ago on Thursday Night Football, and I expect another shootout to happen again. I know there's a lot of concern in terms of the Bucs offense. There's going to be no Chris Godwin. He is done for the season. There's going to be no Mike Evans. Mike Evans is going to be out now for at least week 12 is what we're hearing. These two teams did put up 66 points. If you look at the Buccaneers' points this season or games this season, they played out a 37-20 victory on week 1. They were involved in the 2016 game in week 2, okay, and then 33 points where they got decimated, didn't turn up against the Broncos at home. But then they put 33 on the Eagles. They put 30 on the Falcons in a 36-30 overtime loss. They put 51 in the Saints. They lost on Monday Night Football, 41-31. And I get it. There's no Evans, there's no Godwin, but the system is there, and the system will allow points to be scored without their wide receivers. Sterling Shepard and Jalen McMillan will step up in this game. Cade Otton will step up in this game. There will be players. Liam Cohen has shown that this offense will score points regardless of who is in it. As long as they got Baker Mayfield, as long as they got a healthy offensive line, they've got 3 running backs who can put up scores. I expect this game to potentially be more points than the 46 that the bookies are saying. Falcons 2.5 is a different story. I do think that the Falcons are probably better than a 2.5 point favorite. And I do actually think that's a good line. If you're a betting person, taking the Falcons at 2.5 is really, really good. I know that they are a bit inconsistent. You don't know what you're going to get. But they were really, really good a couple of weeks ago against this team. They've got that formula on how to put points on Tampa. Tampa's so banged up in the secondary. They've got all the right weapons to take advantage of the injuries that the Buccaneers have right now. Because it's not just wide receiver. They're banged up at corner. They're banged up on the D-line. They're banged up at linebacker. Savonica Dennis is now out for the season. So they have a lot of injuries all over the defensive end. And the whole back line, they're down to Jamal Dean is on IR, who's their leading corner. You're looking at this, and this team is just absolutely riddled with injuries, and that's going to make it ripe for the Falcons to take advantage. And I think they will in this game. I would expect the Falcons to take care of this. As for the quarterbacks here, I have Baker Mayfield at 10, Kirk Cousins at 13 this week. Both of those I do expect to put on good showings. The running back situation is interesting. I have Bijan all the way down at 18. That's just because the Buccaneers can stop the run. It's the one area they are healthy. They'll stop the run, but you can pass on this team, and you will do. Then you've got the trio of Tampa Bay Buccaneer backs. I've got Rashad White at 25, Bucky Irving at 33, and then I've got Sean Tucker at 50. I've got Tyler Algier in here at 39. So there's 5 fantasy viable running backs, although I'd probably say Sean Tucker probably isn't fantasy viable, but he could have a splash, but I probably wouldn't start him. Drake London is my wide receiver 8 in this game. Darnell Mooney is my wide receiver 17 in this game. I have Sterling Shepard at 23. I expect, and how I see it, and I could be totally wrong because we don't overly know, but when Chris Godwin has sat out series in the season, it's Sterling Shepard who has filled that role. So I'm expecting Shepard, with the relationship he has with Baker Mayfield, with a relationship they have all the way back to college, to fill in that Chris Godwin role. I would expect Jalen McMillan to go out wide, and I expect him to take a lot of the snaps out there. And that's definitely one part that I think you'll see him step up with as well. I will expect the Buccaneers to make a trade for wide receivers. Because I think whilst they say they like their guys, I do think they will want to go and get another guy, but they'll probably get a cheap veteran. They're not going to go after one of the the Cooper Cups of this world. That's not going to happen. If you're looking for other wide receivers, potentially Trey Palmer might be one that will have some impact on this game, but he'd be a bit more of a big play threat as opposed to a fantasy consistent guy. So I think the guys you're going to see line up in this game will be Sterling Shepard, Jalen McMillan, and Trey Palmer will be the big 3. And then the only other guy they've got on the roster that's healthy is Ryan Miller. So it's a real bare bones kind of cast now, which is why I think they'll get somebody in. Speaking of Jalen McMillan, I have him at wide receiver 32, Trey Palmer, wide receiver 39. If you want a desperation play right now, Trey Palmer is probably it. He's the kind of guy that can put up touchdowns. We saw it at 10 last season. I think we saw it in the postseason last season against the Eagles as well. There is some trust there in that offense if you're looking for a desperation play there. As for the tight ends in this one, I have them back-to-back. Cade Otton is at 6 because of this increased workload he will see, and Kyle Pitts is at 7. I don't expect the defenses to be overly big in this one, although Baker Mayfield has been turning the ball over, which is why the Falcons are somewhat interesting. They are at 15 this week. I have the Tampa D at 19. And then as for kickers, Young Hoku, I have at 4, and Chase McLaughlin is at 11. You could definitely start both kickers in this game, that's for sure. Couple of games left before we call it a day here. The first one is Patriots v Jets. Jets favored by 7. Not sure buying that. Over under set 41. I can't get on board with the Jets at 7. I couldn't get on board when they were favourites last week at 2.5. I can't get on board with them when they're favourites at 7. And I know the Patriots were bad in London, and maybe that is why they're at 7. The Patriots having to come back, and they'll be a bit sluggish. And there's a narrative there you could spin, but I feel like this is just chasing the Devontae Adams, Aaron Rodgers dream, and I can't get on board with it. Over under 41, I can get on board with, but Jets favoured by 7. I think this is a low-scoring affair. I think if Drake May can actually make some throws in this game, the Patriots have half a chance. It will be tough. It will be very, very tough. But I think this will be a low-scoring fantasy affair. I don't think there's too much you're going to want to get out of this one in particular. None of the quarterbacks here are viable. Aaron Rodgers is the best placed here at 22. Drake May is at 27. In terms of Breece Hall, he's my running back 5. I think you get some more passes in the air. They've finally seen the light and giving him the ball a little bit more here. Ramondre Stevenson is my running back 24. Antonio Gibson is a bit lower for me in this one. He's not one I would be starting. And then as it comes to the wide receivers, I have Devontae Adams at 16. I think they'll force feed him some targets. I have Garrett Wilson at 26. Demario Douglas has a really tough matchup, is all the way down at 66. Don't love that one. Not too high on the tight ends here. If you want to take a punt on Hunter Henry, he is tight end 17. Tyler Conklin is at 22. The Jets DST are at DST 7 this week. And I'm not fancying the kickers. Stay away from that. Not a lot of fantasy relevance. A couple of Jets players, maybe. There isn't anyone really other than Ramondre Stevenson for the Patriots, or you want to take a punt on Hunter Henry. The last one here is the Eagles. The Eagles versus the Bengals. This should be a really good game. Bengals currently favored by 2. Over under 48. I can't really call this. If I had to pick, I would probably say that the Eagles are favorite for me. I just don't trust the Bengals D in a tight spot. So I'm a little surprised, but it's a close game. I guess you got to pick a winner. I'd probably say that the Eagles, I think this will be a shootout. I think the over will be smashed. And I expect maybe the Eagles will just get home here in a high scoring game. I have Jalen Hurts as my QB2 this week. I have Joe Burrow as my QB5. In terms of Saquon, he is my RB2 this week. Chase Brown is RB29. Zach Moss, RB41. I have both Cincinnati receivers inside the top 7. They are at 6 and 7, but AJ Brown is my wide receiver 1. This is going to shock people. Devontae Smith is my wide receiver 51. Wrote him up in my Fantasy Pros column. He's not had a good run of it as of late. He's also got a really tough matchup, one of the toughest cornerback matchups against Mike Hilton, who's probably been the best corner in the NFL this season. I don't want part of that. Sit Devontae Smith at all costs here. You should not be playing him and risking him in a lineup this weekend. As for tight ends here, this is a tricky one. We're still waiting on some news at tight end. So at the moment, I have Grant Calcaterra in at 32, Eric Hall at 31. So you're probably fading all of those positions there. I'm not trusting the DSTs in this one. I have the Eagles as the higher placed at 17, the Bengals at 20. But you could definitely start the kickers here. Evan McPherson is at kicker 8. And I have Jake Elliott at 17, but actually he's probably not a bad start for those guys outside of the mainstream. If you've got him, you should feel okay. That's going to do it for the early window. We'll come back tomorrow and we'll break down the remaining 7 games of the week, where there are 3 heavy favorites in that one, which is going to be hard to look at for fantasy football, but it'll be all good. Enjoy the game tonight. Should be very good. Enjoy the podcast. Please come and join me later on tonight. That'll be a really good one as well. But until then, Rush Nation, don't forget, as always, keep rushing.